I agree with that. That they have been changed from something else, but the process was not GMO. The process is like, do you know when you eat apples? It wasn't many varieties of apples, but man has created varieties of apples by taking pollen from one kind of apple. Like, say you have an apple that's really, really crispy, but not real sweet. So they take the pollen from that apple. Wait a minute, They take the pollen from that apple and put it and pollinate another tree that has really sweet apples and not too crispy. So they cross-pollinate, and what you come up with, and so the farmer, he'll wait and see what will be produced. So he will take that fruit and see if the two truly made a union of one crispy, sweet apple. And so then he will take those seeds, and a lot of them don't work. It don't work for a lot of the fruit and vegetables. And it goes with a lot of different grapes, but I'm just using apples as an example because I used to pick apples when I was a kid for money. And I know, and I've seen the evolution of apples from a few to thousands of different varieties of apples, but it wasn't always that way. So they cross-pollinate, take the seeds on the good ones, and plant apple trees, and they come up with this other kind of apple. It's not the hard, crispy one that was sour or the sweet one that was soft, but it was one that's the same. And so it is with broccoli, cauliflower. And so I'm saying, if you're against, if people are saying you shouldn't eat broccoli because it's not pure, it's not a pure food, it's man-generated by man, or cauliflower, same thing, and asparagus, that's what I was trying to say. Not asparagus. What's a leafy vegetable that's green, that's, I can't think of it right now. The one everybody is raving over now. Kale. Kale is one, too, that's not original that way. It also has been altered to produce kale. But families that is in the same families produce, if you join them together, they will produce something else. And so, but GMO is totally different. GMO foods, those foods, like I just mentioned, families that's in families, those are not GMOs. But when you have a species that is totally different from another species, for instance, let's use cabbage. Cabbage will get cabbage worms. But if you take the genetic material from that cabbage worm and instill it in the cabbage seeds, then you will get a cabbage that will repel that worm. That is GMO. That is not healthy. That has a species in it that is not related to it. For instance, let me give you another example of non-GMO, of GMO. This is GMO, surprisingly. You have a male donkey, and you have, which is called a jack, and a female horse. If the two should come together, they will conceive a mule. But that mule can conceive nothing. That the only way to keep getting mules is to unite a male donkey to a female horse. Otherwise, mules cannot regenerate themselves because their chromosomes or their DNA has been altered. They cannot produce another mule. There's only way to produce a mule is with a male donkey and a female horse. But with food, my point is when people so adamantly speak about broccoli and cauliflower and kale and cabbage, when they so quickly go against it, most of the things we're eating has been modified, not necessarily genetically modified, but they have been grafted in. I'll never forget, I was a kid and saw an apple tree with a growing peaches. They had one branch that had been grafted into that apple tree, and it grew peaches, but the rest of the tree grew pears. Apples. And so my point is that these things have been going on for thousands of years. Broccoli was created, I think they said 2,000 years ago. And because somebody not genetically modified, we need to understand it can be a hybrid plant, but it's not necessarily genetically modified. We do know that there are many genetically modified foods. And the difference, if a bug or an animal, if an animal eats your corn, it is not genetically modified. They won't eat animals, deers and things will not eat genetically modified foods. We'll eat them, but animals won't eat them. Unless, of course, I guess if they're starving to death, they might eat them. But that's the problem they're having, is producing food for these animals to eat because they reject genetically modified food. So what do they have to do? They have to spray them with something else to make it more appealing to them. So, so my point for this is that people have spoke harshly to other people who believe that you shouldn't eat broccoli or cauliflower, or that it's acidic and not alkaline, and they continue to bash each other. But the point is, I guarantee you, if you buy grapes, if you buy lemons, if you buy, especially seedless lemons, if you buy seedless grapes, if you buy apples, they're probably not heirloom. They're probably hybrids. So let's not jump on each other's back about this, because trust me, even in our ignorance, we eat something, be it genetically modified like corn and soybeans and a whole plethora of fruits and vegetables, that we ought not be so hard on people who's eating a cabbage, or who's eating broccoli, or who's eating cauliflower, because we don't know what we're eating. So that is it's been a hard week this week with this subject for some reason, and I understand Dr. Sabi has taught that, and he was absolutely correct. But there's 1,000 other things we don't know we're eating, and that's injurious to us and to ourselves and to our bodies. And one other thing I saw, someone said on Facebook, his doctor told him he needed more vitamin D. How do we get vitamin D? He said, what should I take? What should I eat? Well, and this is what I said. Go outside and stand in the sun. Your body will make its own. You don't have to take vitamin D. And that's what, and when I think about it, I said, that's amazing how the body works. Give it good things, it produces good things. We listen to people say put on sunscreen and all this. Your body needs the sun. Your body needs the sun to create vitamin D, which we don't even realize is being created in us. So don't be so scared to get up and get out. Get up and go out in the sun. It can be wintertime. It's still, if there's sun out there, it's going to create vitamin D in your body. So that's what I have for you today. I'm sorry it took so long, but that's what I have for you today. And before my brother reads the scripture, after he finishes, I do want to say this. I want everybody to be respectful of the call today. I believe, I'm not certain that it's going to be open forum. Be respectful.
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. I want everyone to be respectful of our presenter and don't interrupt him or anybody else that's speaking. We don't need little negative comments. If it's getting to you so bad, put your phone on mute and scream or something. But have respect, and we are all in this boat together. We are not anti anybody that's on this line. So respect our presenter. He has a wealth of knowledge for us, and from what I understand, it's on the origin of marriage, and I got to make some phone calls to get some people on because I want them to hear this. And so, again, I say be respectful. Limit your comments or questions to 2 minutes, and give him a chance to respond. And when he's responding, please don't interrupt him. Just be respectful. And when the whoever have a question or a comment, when we hear that question or comment, please, we don't interrupt them either. So it's just a matter of being respectful to one another. So now our brother is coming with the scripture.
Excuse me. Let me make a quick comment on the GMO.
Yes, sir.
Genetic modified. The Almighty tells us that the whole earth is out of course.
That's
so
right.
not only do we have the mule today, we have many animals that has been mixed.
That's right.
I done seen, today, like what you stated about the GMO that the animals don't really eat, and naturally they wouldn't eat it. But today,
right,
with the whole earth being out of course, I done seen birds eating chicken. You know how a person might throw chicken out the car or something in the street? I done seen birds eating chicken, fried chicken and everything. So what that show is that the whole earth is out of course. And also, the white man have a vault. I can't recall the name of the vault today, where they put all their heirlooms at. They got every seed of the earth.
That's true.
Yeah, they got it in reserve. But what we should ask ourselves, if that is true, and they got every original seed, why do they keep mixing everything? Because they are going against the will of the Most High.
That's right.
So as the sister stated, we must be very careful and critical of how we talk to one another about what we eat today, because just about everything we eat is defiled. We just on the search to try to eat better, to try to eat healthier. But the fact still remains, just about everything we eat and drink is defiled.
That's right. That's true.
I have nothing else to say.
Okay, my brother, you going to read the scriptures for today?
Yes, I am.
I think okay. Go ahead, brother.
Oh, sorry about that. Okay, yeah, we starting at Psalms 45, please, if everyone would turn there.
Okay.
Okay. Psalms 45, it says, "My heart is inditing a good matter. I speak of the things which I have made touching the king. My tongue is the pen of a ready writer. Thou art fairer than the children of men. Grace is poured into thy lips. Therefore Elohim have blessed thee forever. Gird thy sword upon thy thigh, O most mighty, with thy glory and thy majesty. And in thy majesty ride prosperously because of truth and meekness and righteousness. And thy right hand shall teach thee terrible things. Thy arrows are sharp in the heart of the king's enemy, whereby the people fall under thee. Thy throne, O Elohim, is forever and ever. The scepter of thy kingdom is a right scepter. Thou lovest righteousness and hatest wickedness. Therefore Elohim, thy Elohim, have anointed thee with the oil of gladness above thy fellows. All thy garments smell of myrrh and aloes and cassia, out of the ivory palaces, whereby they have made thee glad. King's daughters were among thy honorable women. Upon thy right hand did stand the queen in gold of Ophir. Hearken, O daughter, and consider, and incline thy ear. Forget also thy own people and thy father's house. So shall the king greatly desire thy beauty, for he is thy Lord, and worship thou him. For he is thy master, and worship thou him. And the daughter of Tyre shall be there with a gift. Even the rich among the people shall entreat thy favor. The king's daughter is all glorious within. Her clothing is of wrought gold. She shall be brought unto the king in raiment of needlework. The virgins, her companions that follow her, shall be brought unto thee. With gladness and rejoicing shall they be brought. They shall enter into the king's palace. Instead of thy fathers shall be thy children, whom thou mayest make princes in all the earth. I will make thy name to be remembered in all generations. Therefore shall the people praise thee forever and ever. Hallelujah.
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 If we can all turn to Psalm 73.
I'm there.
Okay. It says, is everyone there?
Yes.
Yes.
It says, truly Elohim is good to Israel, even to such as are of a clean heart. But as for me, my feet were almost gone. My steps had well nigh slipped. For I was envious at the foolish when I saw the prosperity of the wicked. For there are no bands in their death, but their strength is firm. They are not in trouble as other men, neither are they plagued like other men. Therefore pride compasses them about as a chain. Violence covereth them as a garment. Their eyes stand out with fatness. They have more than their heart could wish. They are corrupt and speak wickedly. Concerning oppression, they speak loftily. They set their mouth against the heavens, and their tongue walketh through the earth. Therefore his people return hither, and waters of a full cup are wrung out to them. And they say, how doth Elohim know? And is there knowledge in the Most High? Behold, these are the unrighteous who prosper in the world. They increase in riches. Verily, I have cleansed my heart in vain and washed my hands in innocency. For all the day long have I been plagued and chastened every morning. If I say I will speak thus, behold, I should offend against the generation of thy children. Hallelujah. When I thought to know this, it was too painful for me until I went into the sanctuary of Elohim, then understood I therein. Surely thou didst set them in slippery places. Thou castest them down into destruction. How are they brought into desolation, as in a moment they are utterly consumed with terrors. As a dream when one awaketh, so, O Yahweh, when thou awakest, thou shalt despise their image. Thus my heart was grieved, and I was pricked in my reins. So foolish was I, and ignorant. I was as a beast before thee. Nevertheless, I am continually with thee. Thou hast holden me by my right hand. Thou shalt guide me with thy counsel, and afterward receive me to glory. Whom have I in heaven but thee? And there is none upon earth that I desire beside thee. My flesh and my heart faileth, but Elohim is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. For lo, they are far from thee. For lo, they that are far from thee shall perish. Thou hast destroyed all them that go a horn from thee. But it is good for me to draw near to Elohim. I have put my trust in Yahweh Elohim, that I may declare all thy works. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. And shalom, Israel. Today's subject matter will be called the origin of marriage and Israel being purged from the four corners of the earth. And I would just like to thank the listening audience this day for lending an ear that ye may hear the true words of Yahweh as they are written in your holy scriptures. So as I've stated, we will start off with marriage and end with the purging. Both of these subject matters are based on two of the questions from last week. And the one question dealing with marriage, we wanted to know, what does it mean when it reads, and they shall be one flesh? So we're going to use the origin of marriage to explain that. The origin is the beginning. Also, there was a question dealing with the refiner fire. And it was asked what was its meaning. At the time, we didn't know the chapter, but the chapter and verse that the brother was looking for was Malachi, the 3rd chapter. So we're going to speak on both of those things this day. So let's get started. And I would like to read a few words dealing with the origin of marriage. And the Almighty tells us in the beginning that Yahweh created man in his likeness and in his image. It also tells us, if we turn our scriptures to Isaiah, the 50th chapter. Isaiah, the 50th chapter. And it tells us in Isaiah, the 50th chapter, the very first verse. And it reads, and in this reading, it will allow us to know that Yahweh, the creator of the heaven and earth, is speaking to and about our fathers and mothers. Not the world, but our fathers and mothers. For it read in the very first verse, thus said Yahweh, where is the bill of your mother's divorcement? And when it's speaking of your mother's divorcement, it is speaking to the 12 tribes of Israel, whom I have put away. To put away, we had to be Yahweh's wife. And this wife is metaphorically and it is symbolically. It is not figuratively, nor is it literally. And the reason I said it like that, because I have seen on Facebook recently where women, Hebrew Israelite women, are saying that with Yahweh being so great and righteous, and with man having a helpmate, I guess that's the way they're going to explain it, with man having a helpmate, Yahweh also had a helpmate. So they saying the creator of the heaven and earth had a wife, had a woman. I don't know what he's going to do with the woman when he is the creator of all, but the rumor is Yahweh has a wife. And that is another lie that they have put on our creator. When you search mythology, you will find that just about every god that is mentioned has a wife or had some type of sexual experience, even with the people. But I challenge Israel today to search your scriptures diligently, thoroughly, and show me the verse that tells us or that denotes to us that Yahweh have a wife besides the symbolic wife of the children of Israel. That's what's so great about our Creator, for He is one, and there is none like Him. So all of those other fake gods dealing with mythology have wives and had sexual relationships with man. Not so for Yahweh Elohim of the Hebrews. So I just wanted to clear that up. That is a lie, and you will never find, even among the pantheons of the gods, you will never find where Yahweh is ever known to have a wife or any sexual relationships. So that is a lie. The first verse of Isaiah 50 reads, thus said Yahweh, where is the bill of your mother's divorcement, whom I have put away? Or which of my creditors is it to whom I have sold you? Behold, for your iniquities have ye sold yourselves, and for your transgressions is your mother put away. So the Almighty lets us know, dealing with the origin of marriage, that He hath married one people out of the whole earth. It also tells us in the 54th chapter of the book of Isaiah, the 54th chapter, the first to the 4th verse, and it reads, Sing, O barren, thy that did not bear. Break forth into singing and cry aloud, thy that did not travel with child. For more are the children of the desolate than the children of the married wife, said Yahweh. Enlarge the place of thy tent, and let them stretch forth the curtains of thy habitation. Spare not lengthen thy cords, and strengthen thy stakes, for thy shall break forth on the right hand, and on the left, and thy seed shall inherit the Gentiles, and make the desolate cities to be inhabited. Fear not, for thou shalt not be ashamed, neither be thou confounded. For thou shalt not be put to shame, for thou shalt forget the shame of thy youth, and shall not remember the reproach of thy widowhood anymore. Because for thy Maker is thy husband. Yahweh of hosts is his name, and thy Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel, the Elohim of the whole earth shall he be called. And please note, in this union, there is only one husband. And we just read in this 5th verse 3 different attributes, actually 4 different attributes, all attribute to the same creator. So the Almighty wants us to know that he is the same. He is the maker. He is the Holy One. He is the Redeemer. He is the Elohim of the whole earth. This is your husband. From the beginning, when the Almighty brought us out of Egypt, is when we were engaged, betrothed, and married. It also tells us in the 6th verse, it reads, For Yahweh hath called thee as a woman forsaken and grieved in spirit, and a wife of youth. When thou was refused, said Elohim, for a small moment have I forsaken thee, but with great mercies will I gather thee. In a little wrath I hid my face from thee for a moment, but with everlasting kindness will I have mercy on thee, said Yahweh thy Redeemer. For this is as the waters of Noah unto me. For as I have sworn that the water of Noah should no more go over the earth, so have I sworn that I will not be wroth with thee, nor rebuke thee. For the mountains shall depart, and the hills be removed. But my kindness, my love shall not depart from thee, neither shall the covenant of my peace be removed, said Yahweh, that have mercy on thee. So I'm reading these chapter and verses to establish the marriage in the beginning with Yahweh and his children. It also tells us one more place, Isaiah, the 62nd chapter. Isaiah, the 62nd chapter, the verse to the 5th verse. And it reads, "For Zion's sake will I not hold my peace, and for Jerusalem's sake I will not rest until the righteousness thereof go forth as brightness, and the salvation thereof as a lamp that burns. And the Gentiles shall see thy righteousness, and all kings thy glory. And thou shalt be called by a new name, which the mouth of Yahweh shall name. Thou shalt also be a crown of glory in the hand of Yahweh, and a royal diadem in the hand of thy Elohim. Thou shalt no more be turned forsaken, neither shall thy land any more be termed desolate, but thou shalt be called Hesabah, and thy land Beulah. For Yahweh delighteth in thee, and thy land shall be married. For as a young man," please take note, "for as a young man marries a virgin," it does not say, "for as a young man layeth with a virgin," but it says, "For as a young man marries a virgin, so shall thy sons marry thee. And as a bridegroom rejoices over the bride, so shall thy Elohim rejoice over thee." Now let us all turn our scriptures to Genesis, the 2nd chapter. For in Genesis, the 2nd chapter, and we all know that Genesis means the beginning. So in the beginning, in the 2nd chapter, it tells us in the 21st verse, and it reads, "And Yahweh Elohim caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he slept. And he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh instead thereof." So it tells us that the Almighty took a rib out of Adam. And this rib, and before I go any further, let's start at the 20th verse, where I could put emphasis on this marriage. It says, "And Adam gave names to all cattle, and to the fowl of the air, and to every beast of the field. But for Adam there was not found an helpmate for him." So what was just said and done was the Almighty had made the animals, the fowls of the air, and every beast of the field. And the Almighty allowed Adam to rule over them. And his measure of ruling, or how it is shown that he rules over them, is by him being the one able to name them. Please take note. And also, please take note of the last sentence, "But for Adam there was not found an helpmate for him." And the same thing I just said about our Creator of the heaven and earth. If you are teaching according to the origin, if you are teaching that Yahweh had a wife, you are teaching that Yahweh is not the Almighty. And one might say, well, where do you get that from, brother? Well, you get that from this 20th verse, because Adam is establishing that he found no helpmate. There was no help in those animals, and we know that to be true because we got laws commanding Israel not to lay with any animals. So you was not to find any help in any of those animals that Yahweh created. So then you get the 21st verse. And it says, and Yahweh Elohim caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he slept, and he took out his rib, and closed up the flesh instead thereof. And the rib, please take note, Adam didn't have a baby. Yahweh took a rib out of Adam, closed Adam up, and from that rib, the potter made a woman. It says in the 22nd verse, and the rib which Yahweh Elohim hath taken from man, made he a woman, and brought her into him. And why did he make a woman out of this rib? Well, again, according to the last sentence of the 20th verse, to find Adam and help mate. That's the purpose, the origin. It says, and Adam said, the 23rd verse, this is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman. And this naming of this woman also shows the authority that the man has. Even though we're going to find out that this woman comes from the bone of my bone and comes from the flesh of my flesh. And the scripture says they shall be one flesh. And many people get from this interpretation that the woman is equal with the man. If we are one, and that one equals up to 100, then she got 50%, and the man got 50%. Well, that might seem right to one that don't understand the scriptures. But we're going to see today that is not true, and there is a reason for Adam being born first. The scriptures don't really put the man over the woman as many of us do this day. But as we read in this 24th verse, we're going to find out that they are one flesh. But as we continue to search this presentation, we're going to find out that the man, because he was born first, have the authority. He has the blessings of the firstborn. And the blessings of the firstborn dealing with Israel is the title, meaning the name, and his name would be Adam or man at this time, and a double blessing. Once we got under the laws, the firstborn son always received a double blessing. So just because he is born first, he is created first, he is the leader. And because he was born first and woman was taken out of him and created, he receives a double blessing from his Father. And the Father is Yahweh. So again, it tells us in the 24th verse, therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave into his wife. And please note, thus far, Yahweh just showed us how he brought forth the woman, how she was created, and how the man named her. Well, after that, it tells us in the 24th verse, therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother's house. He living with his mother and father like many of us are doing this day, and shall cleave into his wife. She has became a wife when he chose her, cleaved into his wife. And this cleaving, this union, established them, as it reads, and they shall be one flesh. And last week the question was, what does it mean when it reads there shall be one flesh? Well, there is two interpretations that will stand the test of time. For Yahweh have already told Israel from the end to the beginning. And I'm going to establish this teaching from the beginning to the end. That's why I'm calling it the origin of marriage. And this origin of marriage, dealing with this one flesh, I gave one of the interpretations last week. And I stated that the one flesh represented that the woman was bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. So sure, we would be one flesh if the woman was taken out of man. It was originally one. The woman was created out of man, from man, using man rib. Man was created from the dust of the ground. So there's only one true creation, and that was with man. Thus, the woman is of the same flesh. Thus, you have one flesh. That is one interpretation. The other interpretation, which will stand the test of time when you're dealing with one flesh, is monogamy. Not polygamy, but monogamy. And in the realm of monotheism, monogamy plays as one flesh. And this monogamy supposed to be a lifetime thing. And one of the ways that you can tell that this was the will of Yahweh is because of what I just read when we established the marriage with Yahweh in the Hebrews. Isaiah 50, Isaiah 54, and Isaiah 62. All of those chapters represent monotheism and monogamy. M-O-N, I might not be pronouncing it right, M-O-N-O-G-A-M-Y. And it deals with a oneness, just like monotheism, a oneness. The Almighty spoke about how we forsook him and how he had to put away his wife. And he's talking about one wife, not 4 and 5 wives, but one wife. And he talked about receiving that wife again. Will it be 2 or 3 wives the next time? Or will it be Israel again, that one wife? The answer is one wife. So when we read this 24th verse, and it says, therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave into his wife, and they shall be one flesh forever. A lifetime is dealing with monogamy. And they were both naked, and man and his wife were not ashamed. So at this time, before sin hit the earth, there was no shame. Today there is shame all the time because sin has entered the earth. But before sin entered the earth, there was no shame. So it wasn't no big thing of seeing one naked and then all of a sudden your libido or your sex drive done jumped to the sky because you done seen a naked part of a woman. Well, that's how it is today. That ain't how it was as we are reading, because they see themselves naked, and there is no lusting, there is no shame. But not so today. And this is letting us know that this one wife came about before any sexual pleasures took place. He's already calling her his wife. They both are naked, and usually that's the problem today. We so caught up in all this sexuality, we see the nakedness or the halfway nakedness of our women, and we have a desire for her. And next thing you know, we done slick talk the woman. And all the time, it don't take slick talking. We must be fair. I'm fair with this. But sometimes we slick talk, and sometimes it don't take no slick talking. But the fact remains, we lay with the woman because of our sexual drive, and then we say the woman is our wife, depending on how good the sex was. Because a lot of times, if the sex is not like one expected, he might not make her his wife. But you're going around teaching, if you lay with a woman, she is thy wife. Well, in the origin of marriage, that was not so. For we see that this woman was brought out of this man, given to this man, and this woman became his wife. And they was naked. There is no words of sexual activity. Because sex does not determine a marriage, but instead, as I stated last week, it consummates one. And we're going to prove this monogamy. We're going to prove this monogamy being based on monotheism, meaning a oneness. When we can prove that by turning our scriptures to the 4th chapter of Genesis. the 4th chapter of Genesis. And in the 4th chapter of Genesis, the 1st and the 2nd verse tells us this. And Adam knew Eve. The word knew in Hebrew represents knowledge and sex. So it was a knowledge of sex. These individuals, when you read knew, as I stated, it denotes knowledge, knowledge of sex. So it says, and Adam knew Eve, his wife. This is the first one. This is the first time. And it is knowledge. It says, and Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived. But it says he knew Eve, his wife. She was already his wife before he knew her, before he sexed her. Don't forget, right now they got clothes on. They got some covering on right now. But before the covering, they was butt naked. But not the desire, not in their mind. Their mind was not naked. Their mind was not ashamed. So they seeing each other naked and having no real conscience of it. Not to where one is desired, but when they became wife and husband, the marriage is consummated. And we are reading the consummation in this first verse. For it reads, and Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain, and said, I have gotten a man from Yahweh. And again bare his brother Abel. And Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. So here is the first sexual bond. Here is the consummation of that marriage. It also tells us, just to establish that point a little more, if you look at the 17th verse, and it reads, and Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bare Enoch. So the men must know the wives before they actually have sex. This is when you having sex. But they already wives before the consummation, as it reads. In the 25th verse, we know that Eve is Adam's wife. Well, in the 25th verse of the 5th chapter, of the 4th chapter, it reads, and Adam knew his wife again, and she bare a son, and called his name Seth. And I would just like to interject, when we read in Genesis 4 and 1, many people see one child there. But when I read it, I have always seen two. And we see the two names, Cain and Abel. But the way it reads, it sounds like that Eve had Cain, and then Adam knew Eve again and had Abel. But it does not read that. It does not say that. So many times I find myself teaching that the first children were twins, because it only lets us know that Adam knew Eve once, And then it said she conceived and bare Cain. And then talk about how Yahweh have gotten a man from Yahweh. And then the second verse said she again bare. Bear just making sense of bringing forth. Bear don't mean again she had sex. That does not mean that. Bear mean bringing forth. So when she brought forth Cain, and then right back it says, and she again bare his brother, Abel. So according to the writing, I teach that this is the first set of twins. And we got a couple sets in our culture and in our history, but I teach that this is the first set of twins, and those twins strived against each other, and one of the twins killed his brother. And then I teach, according to the 25th verse, Adam had sex again with his wife named Eve, and bare a son, and called his name Seth. For it reads, for Elohim said, she have appointed me another seed instead of Abel, whom Cain slew. So I teach that to know his wife is to lay with his wife, to have sex with his wife, to, in the beginning, to consummate the marriage to his wife. Not sex, then a wife. Not in the beginning, that is. It also tells us, if we turn our scriptures to Exodus, the 21st chapter, for we know that many of the women that was used and that was married was used to bring forth and to make up the nation of Israel, 12 sons. And I would like to also state, in saying this, when the Almighty told us in Genesis, the 2nd chapter, that the woman should be bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh, and that they shall be one flesh, dealing with monotheism and dealing with monogamy, it lets us know that it only takes one flesh. And this one flesh is to bring forth something special. And our great father Abraham did not really understand these things in one point of his life, when the Almighty came to him and told him of an old age that he would have a son. Now, don't forget, Sarah is already his wife, and there's no record that they was having sex. I'm quite sure they was, but I'm just saying there is no real record until the Almighty tell Abram that he is going to have a son, a hire. Well, in the beginning, under monotheism, the Almighty tells us, and monogamy, the Almighty tells us that he shall cleave into his wife, and they shall be one flesh. And when the Almighty told Abraham these things, his wife, Sarah, gave her handmaid into her husband Abraham. And Abraham had a child from this woman. and his name was Ishmael. Well, about 12 or 13 years later, the Almighty came to Abraham, letting Abraham know about Genesis, the 2nd chapter, and letting him know that, no, son, this is the wife of thy youth. I know she might be old now, but this is the wife of thy youth. And that's why I told you in the 24th chapter that thou shalt be one flesh. Because out of this one flesh, you are supposed to bring forth something very special. And he means this one flesh. And the great example was our father Abraham misunderstanding, because they thought, and I say they because it was his wife that gave him the handmaid. They thought that they could bring this special person or this special thing out of another woman. And that is not so according to Genesis 2:24. So where did the special thing come from? Where did the child come from? As I was stating, 13 years later, you got Ishmael, a baby coming from that old wife of thy youth. And it showed that Abraham could have had 10 wives, but only one of those wives was going to produce that special thing that Yahweh have thought of and demanded from the beginning. And that is an holy seed. And that holy seed stayed within that one bloodline. As the sister spoke earlier, it cannot be of GMO. Genetic modified. That seed cannot be genetically modified. So you were not allowed to use another woman. It had to be a woman of thy own flesh. And out of that woman, Yahweh will bring forth that holy seed. So I just wanted to establish that, dealing with our father Abraham, before I read about these laws. Because in dealing with what I just said about Abraham and his 2 wives, the Almighty tells us in Exodus, the 21st chapter. In Exodus, the 21st chapter, it tells us, even though I just stated in the beginning that the Almighty wanted one. He made one from man. He didn't take 7 ribs. He took 1 rib from man and made a woman and gave that woman into that man that they may produce the holy seed. If we lay with foreigners, we would not produce the holy seed. So in Exodus, the 21st chapter, it tells us this. And I will start at the 10th verse. Let's start at to get a greater idea. This is the treatment dealing with servants of the Hebrews. And it lets us know the judgments or the ordinances of how to deal with a servant. And this servant is, or this treatment of servants is dealing with marriage. and is dealing with sex and is dealing with the responsibility of them both. For it tells us, I'll start at the 7th verse, and it reads, and if a man sell his daughter to be a maid servant, and when you read these things, it's not as today, so we can't compare them as today. This is during our time, and these are the laws that was given to us to govern ourselves in our own land. And these are ordinances dealing with servants. And many times when you read, if a man sell his daughter to be a man's servant or a maid servant, that represent us dealing with some type of debt or something like that, to where we allowed our sons and our daughters to be maid servants and men servants, which would be doing some type of work for people, and they could use that man or woman up to 6 years, 7, but the 7th year was the year of release. So if you was a maid servant taking care of a debt, or a male servant taking care of debt, you had those 6 to 7 years to work to try to take care of that debt, or your father or someone else could redeem you, meaning they could pay whatever you still owed, and then your servitude would have been over. This is not talking about a slave as we know it today, one taken out of their land through the act of captivity and never returned. No, this is not that. We released our servants every 7 years, which was called a year of release. We did not make our servants serve forever as we do, or as the enemy do this day. It says, the 7th verse again, and if a man sell his daughter to be a maid servant, she shall not go out as the manservant do, if she please not her master, who have betrothed, engaged her to himself, then shall he let her be redeemed to sell her into a strange nation. So it is betrothed, and when one is betrothed, they are actually married. It is an assigned marriage. It is a marriage that has been set up, and it is a marriage that have been planned on. Same way when you are engaged. Y'all might not get married the next day. It might be next year. So you're planning all these things that's going to take place in the future in that marriage. But that woman and that man is already assigned. Y'all know next year y'all supposed to be married legally. And then you will consummate the marriage. Most times when you read our scriptures, when you find a woman, she is a virgin. A virgin is one that is not having sex. So when you ran into this virgin, unless you was a wicked man or unless you raped her, and we got laws dealing with that also, but unless you raped her, the woman was a virgin. And she stayed a virgin until you consummated the marriage. And we even have laws that establish that, because when a man married his wife and he or she was found not to be a virgin, Well, the man that paid such a high dowry and was in love with this woman is allowed to bring this to the priest. And then we would take that to the woman's father's house. And we would tell the father or the woman's father and mother that we have found your daughter not a virgin. Now hold up. How you going to be able to do that if you was already sexing her before y'all got married? If you was already sexing before you got married, you already knew she wasn't no virgin because you done already laid with her. But the scenario in the law tells us that the man is already married to the wife. Now it comes time to consummate the marriage, and he find her not to be a virgin. So he had to take her to her father's house. And the mother and the father had to produce the cloth or the proof of virginity. If not, the woman was killed. If they could, then the man was punished for bringing up a bad name on one of the daughters of Zion. So that's another proof that the woman supposed to have been a virgin. And that's another proof that the man did not lay with the woman first. It was after they were married. Sex consummated the marriage. Well, in this 8th verse it says, if she please not her master, who have betrothed her to himself, then he shall let her be redeemed. Sell her into a strange nation, he shall have no power, seeing he have dealt deceitfully with her. Because he done took her, he done betrothed her, but now he don't have no favor, or she don't have no favor in his eyes. She pleased not her master. The 9th verse. And if he have betrothed her into his son, he could engage her into his son. He shall deal with her after the manner of a daughter. And that's what you call one when your son marries a woman. You call her your daughter-in-law because y'all married, and all he did was betroth her to his son. He ain't said his son had no sex yet, but it tells us in that 9th verse, if he betrothed her into his son, he should deal with her after the manner of a daughter. You wouldn't do that if you wasn't married to him. Or if she wasn't married to him, you wouldn't do that. That's just your son's girlfriend. But when they married, now she becomes your daughter-in-law. And it has nothing to do with sex right here. And then the 10th verse says, if he take him another wife, it ain't saying if he go out there and have sex again. It says if he take him another wife, her food, her raiment, and her duty of marriage, y'all say married, shall be not diminished. And all this is saying is, if he keep that wife and he take another wife, well, the first wife, food, her raiment, and her duty of marriage shall he not diminish. So it tells us that whatever food, however you was loading up the refrigerator and the pantry with food before you took on this other wife, that's how the refrigerator supposed to stay. Whatever fine clothing that you was buying for your wife before you got this other woman, that's how those clothes supposed to stay. It don't supposed to diminish. In her duty, the sexual duty of a man with his companion shall not diminish. So now you got two women to worry about. And you might not have the same strength. Well, the Almighty said if you don't. The 11th verse says this. And if he do not these three, and you know how we teach, he always said all. So the scripture says, if he do not these three into her. So he might can do one of them. The Almighty says she can leave. He might can do two of them. The Almighty says she can leave. The scripture says in the 11th verse, and if he do not these three into her, then shall she go out free without money. Meaning, they don't have to pay any redemption money. Remember, we already spoke and said that she can be redeemed by her father or someone else. Well, if these things happen to a woman that is betrothed into a son, and he take another wife, and these three things cannot diminish. If so, the woman can leave without any redemption money. Nobody have to come to redeem her out of that. I am showing this to prove that each time these people were single, they was betrothed, they was married, and if they take on another woman, all the duties of the first wife shall not diminish. Even the carnal or the sexual part shall not diminish. It also tells us, if we look at Deuteronomy, the 20th chapter. Deuteronomy, the 20th chapter. I am showing this oneness, even though we can show in history that our fathers had more than one wife. But the origin of marriage was supposed to be one. The bone of my bone and the flesh of my flesh. Therefore, we can bring forth this holy seed. This is the order from the beginning. It tells us in Deuteronomy 20, the 7th verse, dealing with another scenario, and this scenario is when we are out to war. We are at war with our enemies. It tells us in the 7th verse, and it reads, and what man is there that hath betrothed a wife? Betrothed mean engaged, assigned, and have not taken her. Please take note. Here is a great witness that a man marries a woman before he knew her. For it reads again, and what man is there that hath betrothed a wife and have not taken her, knew her, sexed her, consummated the marriage. It says, let him go and return into his house. Please take note. The Almighty want a man to go back home. If you done married a woman, y'all ain't had sex yet, he wants you to take your butt back home and have sex with that woman. Why? Let's read. It says, let him go and return into his house, lest he die in the battle and another man take her. So it lets us know that to consummate the marriage is done through sex. And once that is consummated, everybody know that the betrothal is done. It happened. It is his wife. And if you go to war and get killed before it's consummated, you kind of leave the woman hanging because it's like leaving her at the altar. Because if he's dead, he ain't going to show up at the altar because he died in the war. So the Almighty said, no, son, you done promised, y'all done made arrangements, so I need you to go. You already married to her. You already betrothed to her. Go and consummate that marriage. That's why he's sending the man home, that he may take her. That's another great example that the Almighty allowed us to know that sex was not first. Actually, sex is second, and it represents the consummation. Not so today. We're reading the origin of marriage. It also tells us, if we look at Deuteronomy, the 22nd chapter. And I'm just going to touch on a few of these because most of us know these chapters. We just don't know what they mean, and we just don't understand them. So I'm touching bases on them. Therefore, when we end the presentation, during the open floor mat part, you should have many questions against my teaching, or you should have many comments agreeing with this teaching. For it tells us in Deuteronomy, the 22nd chapter. The 13th verse. And it reads, if any man take a wife, please take note how this reads. And if any man take a wife, you took the wife first. And then the next word, and also after, go into her. So if the man have taken a wife first, then it says, and this is a next act. It's not the same act, nor is this the act before, but it's the next act. It says, if any man take a wife and go into her. It don't say if a man go into her and take a wife. It says the opposite. If any man take a wife and go into her and hate her. My point is, a man have to take a wife and then go in her. They are married. The marriage is consummated. And then once they are married, the man hate her. That lets us know that a man took a wife and then he went into her. We have several laws in this particular chapter, and a couple of them are dealing with rape. It's a couple of them dealing with the consent of a woman. But my point that I am driving in today is to show the origin of marriage, to show that one was married and then they had sex, and that sex was supposed to consummate the marriage and bring forth this holy seed. That's all I'm trying to show today. It also tells us, if we take a look at Deuteronomy, the 24th chapter. And in the 24th chapter of Deuteronomy, the first verse, it reads, when a man hath taken a wife, please take note of the process. When a man hath taken a wife and married her. Now hold on. Is a wife part of a marriage? Sure she is. Well, when one is married, do that consist of a man and a woman? Sure it does. Well, in this first verse it says, when a man hath taken a wife, he done taken the woman and married her. And it come to pass that she find no favor in his eyes, because he hath found some uncleanness in her. Then let him write her a bill of divorcement and give it in her hand and send her out of his house. Please take note. And when she is departed out of his house with the bill of divorcement, she may go and be another man's wife. Israel was not to play the whore. So this is not commanding the woman, well, if the man give you a bill of divorcement, now you can go out there and have sex. Well, that's what it says according to the bad teachings of our brothers today, because they teaching that sex is marriage. So you will be teaching that Yahweh said, well, once the woman gets the bill of divorcement, she can just go up and down the street and play the whore. That is not scripture, nor is that holy. For it tells us in the second verse, and when she is departed out of his house, she may go and be another man's wife. It don't say go and have sex. Go and be another man's wife. And how do you become another man's wife? Y'all are betrothed or y'all are married, and then you consummate the marriage. And that's what that is saying. And the reason you know that is listen to the next couple of verses. And of the latter husband, the one that gave her the bill of divorcement, hate her. And, the latter husband, the husband that she just married, go out and marry, hate her, and write her a bill of divorcement, and give it in her hand, and send her out of his house. Or if the latter husband died, the man that she just married, and he died, which took her to be his wife. The former husband, which sent her away, may not take her again. Now, what is this saying? Not take her again to have sex, or not take her again to be his wife? To be his wife. Yeah, they might have sex once she come back, but the Almighty saying, no, she can't even come back. So it can't be talking about sex first. It must be talking about marriage. And it is, as you read. But it lets us know that the marriage is coming before the sex. For it reads one more time. Please catch this. In the third verse, and if the latter husband hate her and write her a bill of divorcement and give it in her hand and send her out of his house, or if the latter husband die, which took her to be his wife, her former husband, the first husband, which sent her away, may not take her again to be his wife. She can't be his wife no more. She can't even come back to that. So how would they have sex? Or how would this mean sex if she was not able to go back to that man? And if sex brought forth the marriage, how could this mean sex? It don't. It means marriage and then the sex. And it also tells us in the fourth verse, after that she is defiled, for that is an abomination before Yahweh. And thou shalt not cause the land to sin by allowing your women to play a whore, just go up and down the street having sex before they are married, which Yahweh thy Elohim give thee for an inheritance. In the fifth verse, back up Deuteronomy 20:7. For the fifth verse says, when a man have taken a new wife, please take note, this is not talking about when a man does sex the woman. So the man just walking up and down the street, sexing women, and now we talking about a good union. No, that ain't this. It says, when a man have taken a new wife, he shall not go out to war. We just read why. Neither shall he be charged with any business, but he shall be free at home 1 year, and shall cheer up his wife, which he have taken. Please take note what is being said. The wife is taken out of her father and mother's house and has became his wife. He was ordered to cheer up his wife for a whole year. But no, she already is wife before he's ordered to cheer her up. To cheer her up means to make sure you there to consummate that marriage. But no, she already is wife, and she already married before the order is for him to go back home and stay, go home or don't go to war, and neither be charged with any business. But he shall be free at home 1 year, and shall cheer up his wife, which he have taken. And cheering up has everything to do with sex, consummating. Might even get some children out of it by the time that year is up. But that is the duty. But please take note, they already married. He's just ordered not to do these things. It also tells us in establishing that the Almighty is dealing with a oneness, is dealing with monogamy, he's dealing with monotheism, dealing with a oneness with himself in Israel. So Israel is not allowed, as the wife, is not allowed to have sex with these other gods and then marry them, because Yahweh is our husband. So we're not allowed to have sex with these other gods and then marry them. Nor are we allowed to marry foreign women. So we're not allowed to grab on to foreign gods. The Almighty called that whoredom. Well, before I bring it all the way to a full circle, because the circle started in Genesis, and it's establishing a oneness. And before I take it to the end of that circle, I would just like to acknowledge a couple words of wisdom. For in the book of Proverbs, the 18th chapter, tells us this. Proverbs, the 18th chapter. And it reads in the 22nd verse. Whoso find a wife findeth a good thing. A wife, not many wives, singular. And obtaineth favor of Yahweh. And Adam did. For Adam called Eve his helpmate. So he did obtain favor from Yahweh. Yahweh the one gave it to him. It also tells us in the 19th chapter, the 14th verse, houses and riches are the inheritance of fathers, and a prudent wife is from Yahweh. So thus far, out of the words of wisdom, even though Solomon had thousands of wives, he is stating that a particular wife is what you're looking for. A particular wife is how one obtains favor from Yahweh. For again, the 14th verse says, houses and riches are the inheritance of fathers, and a prudent wife is from Yahweh. So it lets us know in this marriage that Yahweh has his hand in it, and it's supposed to be done in righteousness. And it lets us know that this is a good thing, and this thing brings forth favor from Yahweh. And knowing that, let us all turn our scriptures to Malachi, the 2nd chapter, to bring this conversation to a full circle. For it tells us in Malachi, 2nd chapter. And we know, as I stated in our history, we can show throughout the scriptures where our fathers had many wives. But out of those many wives, there was only one wife that brought forth the holy seed. And also, mind you, when we read these scriptures, trying to find the ways of our fathers, we will see that the scriptures never really tell us about polygamy until after Israel coming up out of Babylon, or Babylon in Egypt. Is really Babylon. when you search the scriptures diligently, when you read about these men that had more than one wife, they are usually prominent men such as kings. You really don't see the common man with more than one wife. And why is that? Because of the origin of marriage. That man took on one wife, and that man was Adam. So the origin of marriage will always go back to that oneness, even though we can find in our scriptures where men had way more than one wife, and as I stated, that was not the common man. So what was common is more prevalent than the exception. That's why we got some rules or some laws dealing with the exception, how we supposed to treat that other woman, or what the laws containing to having more than one wife. Well, in Malachi, the 2nd chapter, it tells us in the 10th verse, Malachi, the 2nd chapter, the 10th verse, and it reads, have we not all one Father? Have not one Elohim created us? And we just read about that creation. Why do we deal treacherously, every man against his brother, by profaning the covenant of our fathers? Yehuda have dealt treacherously, and an abomination is committed in Israel and in Jerusalem. For Yehuda have profaned the holiness of Yahweh, which he loved, and have married the daughters or the daughter of a strange god. It's just showing how corrupt we were in our land and how we forsook our husband, which was Yahweh. 12th verse. Yahweh will cut off the man that does this, the master and the scholar, out of the tabernacle of Jacob, and him that offer an offering unto Yahweh of hosts. And this have you done again, covering the altar of Yahweh with tears, with weeping, and with crying out, insomuch that he regards not the offering anymore, or receive it with good will at your hands. The 14th verse that we are concerned about today, it says, yet ye say that the brother don't really know what he's talking about. It says that we can have more than one wife, so we are allowed to have more wives. We're allowed to commit polygamy. Well, the 14th verse says we better pay more attention, because it says in the 14th verse, yet ye say, wherefore? Why, Samuel? Why is you showing us in Genesis 2:21 to 25 represent a oneness, a one flesh, monogamy? It says in the 14th verse, yet ye say, wherefore? Because Yahweh have been witness between thee and the wife of thy youth. The Almighty is the witness of that. it is under a covenant, it says, against whom thou hast dealt treacherously. Yet is she thy companion and the wife of thy covenant, according to Genesis 2 and 21 through 25. Yes, she is. The 15th verse. And did not he make one? I'm trying to show him that. Malachi is asking the people according to the story. And did he not make one? Yes, he did. Bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. Yet had he the residue of the Spirit. And wherefore one? Why is Yahweh only wants you to have one? And why did he only make Adam one? It says that he might seek a Elohimly seed. And the man that is wise in his own eyes might think, well, you can seek the seed faster. If I got more, not so. And that's what the story of Abraham, Sarah, and Hagar is about. That's what that Hagar is about. That's the story. Because they thought they could get the seed out of another woman, and it did not come out. A son came out, and the son was blessed, and his name was Ishmael. And he came 13 years before the holy seed. But that holy seed came out of Abraham's wife of his youth. Not the new wife, but Abraham's wife of his youth, the first wife. So it's telling us why. And the Almighty wants us to know how holy this reason is. It says, wherefore one, that he might seek a Elohimly seed. Therefore take heed of your spirit. Don't go telling people whoever you sex is your wife, because you ain't going to bring forth the holy seed out of that. That's why Yahweh said, therefore take heed to your spirit, your sex drive, your covetousness. It says, and let none deal treacherously against the wife of his youth. Beginning. So, using this verse, it brings us all the way back to the beginning. The beginning was that Yahweh created man and woman to be one flesh, and the woman to be the man's helpmate. And in this help, the man was supposed to be faithful to this wife, which is the wife of his youth. The 16th verse. For Yahweh, the Elohim of Israel, said, he hate putting away. He hate divorce. That's what we were reading in Deuteronomy 24, 1 to 2. It's letting you know that the Almighty did not like divorce, so he set up that statutory law. That way we could not keep committing divorces. You were not allowed to go back to that man that divorced you, and then he could divorce you again. No. The Almighty said, I hate putting away. For one covers violence. It is violent with his garment, said Yahweh of hosts. Therefore, take heed to your sex drive, or therefore, take heed to your spirit, that ye deal not treacherously with that one, Israel. So I hope that this give us some understanding about that one. And as I stated, when you search the scriptures diligently, you will not find Israel with a bunch of women, nor will you find them playing polygamy in the enemy's land. When you see our men with more than one woman, they were in their land. They were under the laws. They were prominent men, and most of them were kings. The common man lived under the common rule, and the common rule was the origin of marriage. Monogamy, a oneness, a one flesh, a lifetime with the wife of thy youth, hoping and praying that y'all bring forth a holy seed. Also, we will speak about purging refiner fire. We will deal with Israel being in an iron furnace of affliction. And we will show how Yahweh purges Israel from the four corners of the earth. Many times we turn on your TV and you see these movies, Purge, Election Day, and there's another movie called Purge where they going around and killing all the people certain nights, and I guess all the people that they're killing represent the evil of the land. Well, knowing the truth of the matter, if there was a true purge in America, all of the Americans or all of the white man will be purged out of it because you're dealing with wickedness. And there is none that have done good. So, if it was a true purging going on in America, all the white man will be purged out of it. Well, I am showing forth today what Yahweh means by purging and how Yahweh will purge us from the four corners of the earth. And I will establish this point by showing how the Almighty purged us and used a refiner fire to cleanse us in Egypt, in our own land, and Babylon and abroad. So let us turn our scriptures by establishing these points. I would like for us all to turn to Psalms, the 12th chapter. Psalms, the 12th chapter. In Psalms, the 12th chapter, it tells us this, to give us an understanding of what a purifying fire is. It tells us in Psalms, the 12th chapter, I'll start at the first verse, and it reads, Help, Yahweh, for the Elohimly man cease, for the faithful fails from among the children of man. They speak vanity, everyone with his neighbor, with flattering lips, and with a double heart do they speak. Yahweh shall cut off all flattering lips and the tongue that speaketh proud things. Who have said with our tongue will we prevail? Our lips are our own. Who is master over us? For the oppression of the poor, for the sighing of the needy, now will I rise, said Yahweh. I will set him in safety from him that puffs at him. The 6th verse. The words of Yahweh are pure words, as silver tried, and that's how we're going to be. That's how we are, purged from the four corners of the earth. And please mind you, Israel, in this purging, you are being tested. You are being proved in this purging. And I will show that with these words. For again, in the 6th verse, it says, the words of Yahweh are pure words, as silver tried in a furnace of earth, purified 7 times. So it lets us know how pure the word of Yahweh is and how it is tried as silver is tried and how it is purified 7 times. So it lets us know there's no dross, there's nothing bad with it. Everything is perfect. Well, it also tells us in Proverbs 25 and 4. Proverbs 25 and 4, dealing with the refiner's fire, dealing with purging from the furnace of affliction. It tells us in Proverbs 25. Because we got to get out of here. And we stated last week that the children of Israel was not judged and punished like the Egyptians. And we established why not. Because they was already being punished. They was already being purged. They was already in the furnace of affliction. For it tells us in Proverbs 25 and 4, take away the dross from the silver, and you and I are the silver and gold, metaphorically, symbolically. Take away the dross from the silver, and there shall come forth a vessel for the finder. And that's what's going to happen with Israel. They are in the furnace of affliction. The dross will be taken from them from the scorching flames of captivity, and then there shall come forth a vessel that Yahweh can use. It also tells us in Proverbs, the 16th chapter, the 6th verse. Proverbs, the 16th chapter, the 6th verse, and it reads, by mercy and truth, iniquity is purged. By mercy and truth, iniquity, sin, dross is purged, and by the fear of Yahweh, men depart from evil. And that's how we are going to be purged from the four corners of the earth, by the almighty mercy and by his truth, his word. For it tells us, before I establish how the Almighty purged us out of Egypt, out of Jerusalem, and out of Babylon and abroad, I would like to establish what is it that Yahweh must refine. What was the dross? What was the alloys that did not allow the silver and gold to shine? Let us all turn our scriptures to 2 Kings, the 17th chapter. And from this stance, we will speak on how we was purged from Egypt, Jerusalem, and Babylon. So it tells us in 2 Kings, the 17th chapter. I would like to start reading at the 7th verse. And this will allow us to know why Yahweh had to purge us from the four corners of the earth. And it tells us in the 7th verse. For so it was that the children of Israel had sinned. So this purging and this refining is dealing with sin. For so it was that the children of Israel had sinned against Yahweh, their Elohim, which had brought them up out of the land of Egypt, from under the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and had feared other gods, and walked in the statutes of the heathen, whom Yahweh cast out before the children of Israel, and of the kings of Israel, which they had made. And the children of Israel did secretly those things that are not right against Yahweh their Elohim. And they built them high places in all their cities, from the tower of the watchman to the fenced city. And they set them up images and groves in every high hill and under every green tree. And there they burnt incense in all the high places, as did the heathen, whom Yahweh carried away before them, and wrought wicked things to provoke Yahweh to anger. For they served idols, whereof Yahweh has said unto them, Ye shall not do this thing. Yet Yahweh testified against Israel and against Yehudah by all the prophets and by all the seers, saying, Turn ye from your evil way. And please take note, when Yahweh told us to turn and we did not obey his voice, thus we need to be purged. Thus we need to be refined. And this purging and refining will not be us keeping a holy covenant in a polluted land, but instead it will come through the scorching flames of our captivity. It says in the 12th verse, For they serve idols, whereof Yahweh has said unto them, Ye shall not do this thing. Yet Yahweh testified against Israel and against Yehudah by all the prophets and by all the seers, saying, Turn ye from your evil ways. and keep my commandments and my statutes according to all the law which I command your fathers, and Yahweh changed not, in which I sent to you by my servants the prophets. Notwithstanding, they didn't turn. Notwithstanding, they would not hear, but hearken their necks, like to the necks of their fathers, that did not believe in Yahweh their Elohim. And they rejected his statutes and his covenant that he made with their fathers, and his testimonies which he testified against them. And they followed vanity and became vain, and went after the heathen that were around about them, concerning whom Yahweh had charged them that they should not do like them. And they left all the commandments of Yahweh their Elohim, and made them molten images, even to calves, and made a grove, and worshiped all the hosts of heaven, and served the Lord. And they caused their sons and their daughters to pass through the fire, and used divinations and enchantments, and sold themselves to do evil in the sight of Yahweh, to provoke him to anger. Therefore, Yahweh was very angry with Israel, and removed them out of his sight. There was none left but the tribe of Yehudah. And I hear a lot of people talking today, Yehudah this, Yehudah that. Yehudah is just like his sister, defiled and rejected. So it ain't no difference. They both is the same. They both going through this purging, and they both are waiting to be brought back from the four corners of the earth. Then they will be one. It tells us in the 19th verse, or the 18th verse, let me read that again, because a lot of people think that Yehudah ain't scattered. Therefore, Yahweh was very angry with Israel and removed them. Them is Israel and Yehudah, as we read, out of his sight. There was none left but the tribe of Yehudah only. Also, Yehudah kept not the commandments. So Yehudah is in the same boat of Yahweh their Elohim, but walked in the statutes of Israel. How can two walk together except they be agreed? So we find Israel and Yehudah scattered on the four corners of the earth this day. The 20th verse. And Yahweh rejected all the seed of Israel, and afflicted them, and delivered them into the hand of spoilers, until he had cast them out of his sight. So with Israel being cast out of his sight, Israel find herself in the corners of the world. And Yahweh said that he will purge them from their filthiness. Thus we read in Deuteronomy, the 4th chapter, dealing with Egypt. I will go in this order: Egypt, the land, and then Babylon. So according to the order, Deuteronomy, the 4th chapter, tells us this. And it reads in the 20th verse. Deuteronomy 4:20, and it reads, I will start at the 19th verse, and it reads, and least thy lift up thy eyes into heaven, and when thou see the sun, and the moon, and the stars, even all the hosts of heaven. And we read that our fathers, even though these words are told to us in the wilderness, I just read where 2 Kings 17, in the land, our fathers did all these things. And if our fathers did all these things, then they could only be breaking the covenant. Thus, the 19th verse says, all the hosts of heaven should be driven to worship them and serve them, which Yahweh thy Elohim have divided into all nations under the whole heaven. But Yahweh have taken you and brought you forth out of the iron furnace, even out of Egypt. So our captivity represents an iron furnace, and this iron furnace is used to purify his sons and daughters. And this purification represents a scorching flame which will produce something useless. It tells us in the 20th verse again, but Yahweh have taken you and brought you forth out of the iron furnace, even out of Egypt, to be unto him a people of inheritance, as ye are this day. So it lets us know that we had to go through something. We had to be afflicted. A furnace is hot, and we had to endure the heat thereof. And many of us will be burnt up in it. Because as I stated, this purging and this refiner's fire will prove you, will test your faith. It also tells us, dealing with being purged from Egypt, if we turn our scriptures to 1 Kings, the 8th chapter. 1 Kings, the 8th chapter. For in 1 Kings, the 8th chapter, the 51st verse, 1 Kings 8 and 51. It tells us, 1 Kings, the 8th chapter, the 51st verse, it tells us, for they be thy people and thy inheritance, which thy broughtest. Please take note. That's why I'm taking us here first. Show us the might of the Most High. Show us that Yahweh required that which is past. And the Almighty is showing us that he did it for us in Egypt. He's going to show that he used it in Jerusalem, and it didn't work. And he's going to show us that he used it in Babylon and will use it to bring us from the four corners of the earth. This purging, this refiner fire. For in the 51st verse it says, for they be thy people and thy inheritance, which thou hast brought forth out of Egypt from the midst of the furnace of iron. So not only is the furnace hot, but it lets us know that we're going to have a hard time because the furnace is of iron, and iron represents something hard. And just like the Almighty said, I'm going to make your heaven iron and your earth brass. Hard. Also, if we turn our scriptures to Jeremiah, the 11th chapter, just touch a couple of scriptures. That way we should have many comments and questions. Jeremiah, 11th chapter, the 4th verse. Jeremiah, the 11th chapter, the 4th verse reads, which I command your fathers in the day that I brought them forth out of the land of Egypt from the iron furnace, saying, obey my voice. And he's going to say that again when he brings us out. Obey my voice and do them according to all which I command you. So shall ye be my people, and I will be your Elohim. So it lets us know that this purging is to bring us back to be in accord and one accord with our Creator. That's what this purifying fire represents. Even though we find ourselves in an iron furnace of affliction. And as I stated, and as we all know, in Ecclesiastes, the 3rd chapter, the 14th and the 15th verse, Solomon tells us that Yahweh requires that which has passed. So that which passed in Egypt is required in Jerusalem. For it tells us, if we turn our scriptures to Isaiah, the 1st chapter, you can list this under Jerusalem or under your land. The first 3 chapters and verses I gave was under Egypt. Now we are in our land, and we are seeing this purging and this refiner fire being used, and we also see Jerusalem being used as an iron furnace. For it tells us in Isaiah, the 1st chapter. I would like to go to the 21st verse. Isaiah, the 1st chapter, the 21st verse. And it reads, how is the faithful city become an harlot? If you ain't faithful, then you're a whore, or you're a harlot in the eyes of the true husband. It was full of judgment, righteousness lodged in it, but now murderers. The 22nd verse, thy silver is become dross, thy wine mixed with water. Thy princes are rebellious and companions of thieves. Everyone loveth gifts and follow after rewards. They judge not the fatherless, neither does the cause of the widow come into them. Therefore said Yahweh, Yahweh of hosts, the mighty one of Israel, I will ease me of my adversaries and avenge me of my enemies. I will turn my hand upon thee and purely purge away thy dross and take away all thy tin. And please note the terminology, tin, not sin, but the tin represent the sin. The dross represent the filthiness, sin. It says, I like to read that very next verse, the 26th verse, and I will restore once to purge away thy dross, and once taken away of thy tin, and I will restore thy judges as at the first, and thy counselors as at the beginning. Afterwards thou shalt be called. After you are purged, after you are cleansed, after the dross is taken away, you will be called the city of righteousness, the faithful city. It also tells us, if we look at Isaiah, the 4th chapter, the 4th verse. Isaiah, the 4th chapter, the 4th verse. After all the destruction that would befall Jerusalem, according to the 3rd chapter of Isaiah, it tells us in the 4th chapter, the 4th verse, when Yahweh shall have washed away. Let's start at the 3rd verse, because this 3rd verse also denotes this uncleanness that was on the women, and how the women was told that 7 women would take hold of one man to do away the reproach, or to take away their reproach. And many people teach this wrong today and exploit it and say that's why a man was to have more than one wife. Well, this particular scenario that is in the 1st verse of the 4th chapter, it is a continuation of the 3rd chapter. And it lets us know that everything is being destroyed, and there is a lot of lament and mourning going on, and the land is desolate. So much that the men have fell by the sword, and the women is fair game, running wherever they can run to take hold of one man. No, one man, not many men. Just like the men wasn't really after many women, the women is not after many men. They are after one man, that their approach may be taken off of them. Well, today, and I done said this before, the men that teach on Isaiah 4 and 1 teach it wrong because they teach that this is a great verse to show the sisters that the man was to have more than one wife. Well, this is not. This is a verse representing shame upon Israel, to where 7 women had to take hold of one man. This is shame. And today, when you apply it to yourself, you find that you can never and have never taken the reproach off the sister. The reproach is still on her, even though you might have taken or might have given her your name. And when you gave her your name, you had 6 other women in the house. So the reproach will not be taken away. And it has not been taken away. But instead, we have put an extra burden on our sisters by teaching this verse wrong. I just wanted to state that since we're here and we just talked about marriage. So this go hand in hand with our conversation. 4 and 1 of Isaiah does not teach us that it gives the man permission to have 7 women or more than one wife. It is a verse of shame. It is a verse of desolation. It is a verse of reproach. So let's go back to Isaiah 4 and 4, and it tells us this. When Yahweh shall have washed away the filth of the daughters of Zion, and shall have purged the blood of Jerusalem. And how they got it in these movies is they'd catch you in the street, they try to kill you, to purge the evil out of the city or out of the land. So in this manner, it's saying when Yahweh shall have washed away the filth of the daughters of Zion. So that means the daughters of Zion are filthy. And it take this purging. According to the movies, they probably just catching the daughters of Zion wherever they can find them on the street and killing them. Well, not so. Dealing with our Creator and dealing with our Creator purging His children out of the land of their enemies. It says, when Yahweh shall have washed away the filth of the daughters of Zion, and shall have purged the blood of Jerusalem from the midst thereof. How is you doing this, Yahweh? Show us what you mean by a refiner's fire. It says, by the spirit of judgment and by the spirit of burning. This is how it happens. We speaking about this, but it is not literally. It is more what is called, and I wrote that definition, it is called a poetic extragation of the effect of real justice and judgment. So this is poetically spoken about judgment and justice. It's not an actual fire. We're not going to actually see a big furnace with fire all over the place. But that is what these words symbolizes. These graves that we find ourselves in is another word for an iron furnace. In Ezekiel, the 37th chapter, the Almighty called them graves. Here, in other places that we're going to go to, we're going to find that the Almighty call it an iron furnace. and it will be done by the spirit of judgment as it is being done this day, and by the spirit of burning. It also tells us if we turn our scriptures to Jeremiah, the 6th chapter. Jeremiah, the 6th chapter. In Jeremiah, the 6th chapter, it tells us, dealing with this great purge and dealing with what needs to be purged from the children of Israel, it tells us in Jeremiah, the 6th chapter, I like to start at the 24th verse. And it reads, "We have heard the fame thereof. Our hands wax feeble. Anguish have taken hold of us, and pain as of a woman in travel. Go not forth into the field, nor walk by the way, for the sword of the enemy and fear is on every side. O daughters of my people, gird thee with sackcloth, and wallow thyself in ashes. Make thee mourning as for an only son, most bitter lamentation. For the spoiler shall suddenly come upon us. I have set thee for a tower and a fortress among my people, that thou mayest know and try their ways." Please take note, because we're going to be proved. We're going to be tested. "They are all grievous, revolters, walking with slanders. They are brass and iron. They are all corrupters. The bellows are burnt. The lead is consumed of the fire. The founder melts in vain. For the wicked are not plucked away." The 30th verse, reprobate, mean refuse silver. Look what Yahweh calling the daughters of Zion and the sons of Israel. Reprobate silver, which means refuse silver, shall men call them, because Yahweh have rejected them. You reject Yahweh, Yahweh will reject thee. Thus, we was called reprobate silver, refused silver. It also tells us, if we turn our scriptures to Ezekiel, the 15th chapter. Ezekiel, the 15th chapter. For in Ezekiel, the 15th chapter, it continues to tell us in the 7th verse, dealing with this useless vine. And this useless vine is a symbol of the children of Israel. And it tells us in Ezekiel, the 15th chapter, the 7th verse, "And I will set my face against them," the children of Israel. "They shall go out from one fire," please take note, "and another fire shall devour them. And ye shall know that I am Yahweh when I set my face against them. So the Almighty letting us know that it is coming with fire, heat, which represent trials and tribulations, pain and suffering. It also tells us, dealing with how the Almighty used Jerusalem as a furnace of affliction. It tells us in Malachi, the 3rd chapter. And Malachi, the 3rd chapter, is where my brother Michael actually spoke about this refiner's fire. And it tells us in the 3rd chapter, I would like to start in the 2nd verse. Well, let's start at the 1st verse. That way we can touch on a note. It tells us, behold, I will send my messenger, and he shall prepare the way before me. And the master whom ye seek shall suddenly come to his temple, even the messenger of the covenant, whom ye delight in. Behold, he shall come, said Yahweh of hosts. And the reason why I want to speak on this because it's in this chapter, but many people teach that this messenger is Jesus. And then you have some that teach that this messenger is a prophet. And then you have some that teach, well, no, it ain't Jesus, but it's John the Baptist that is coming or being a forerunner for Jesus. And I know that that is taught. That's why I want to take a quick second and show us who this messenger is and who have always been the messenger and the messenger of the covenant. And as I stated, it is not Jesus, because according to the New Text, the Christ of the New Testament, according to the genealogy that they use, JC supposed to be coming out of the tribe of Yehuda. Well, as we continue to read, we're going to find out that this messenger is not of the tribe of Yehuda, but of the tribe of Levi. And I don't know much about John the Baptist because I choose not to know much about him. But the fact still remains that this person must come from the house of Levi. For it tells us in the 2nd verse, but who may abide the day of his coming, and who shall stand when he appears? For he is like a refiner's fire. And this is what my brother asked, what do this mean? And like fuller's soap. Fuller's soap is the common soap that the people washed up with. It says, and he shall sit as a refiner and purifier of silver. So here again in Jerusalem, the children of Israel will be purified. They will be purged and purified, refined. For it tells us in the 3rd verse, and he shall sit as a refiner and purifier of silver. And he shall purify who? The sons of Levi, and purge them as gold and silver. And how is gold and silver purged? In the fire, that they may offer unto Yahweh an offering and righteousness. Because before these things happen, they are unclean. They need their dross to be purged from them, as silver and gold is. Then, and only then, will they be able to offer an offering to Yahweh in righteousness. It tells us also, dealing with that first verse, the note that I just gave, dealing with who is this messenger? This messenger is a reforming or a messianic priest. And we know that to be true if we turn our scriptures to the second chapter, the 7th verse. The second chapter, the 6th verse, should I say. And in let's go to the 5th verse. It tells us, well, let's go to the 4th verse, 2 and 4, to establish without a shadow of a doubt that 3rd chapter, the 1st verse, have nothing to do with Jesus, nor does it have anything to do with John the Baptist, nor does it have anything to do with a king, nor does it have anything to do with a prophet. For it tells us again in the 4th verse of the 2nd chapter, and ye shall know, not guess, but and ye shall know that I have sent this commandment into you, that my covenant might be with who? Levi, said Yahweh of hosts. My covenant was with him of life and peace, and is still with him. As we know in Jeremiah, the 33rd chapter, the two families, the house of Yehudah and the house of Levi, the house of David and the house of Aaron. The 5th verse, my covenant was with him of life and peace, and I gave them to him for the fear wherewith he feared me, and was afraid before my name. And what they are speaking about is what Phinehas did in the book of Numbers, the 25th chapter. How he feared Yahweh, and the Almighty made that covenant with him. And he was of Levi. The 6th verse. The law of truth was in his mouth, and iniquity was not found in his lips. He walked with me in peace and equity, and did turn many away from iniquity. The 7th verse. For the priest's lips shall keep knowledge, and they should seek the law at his mouth. So he's the messenger, and the Almighty is even telling us that the people shall seek the law at his mouth. So he is the messenger, have always been the messenger. When the Almighty came to Egypt to deliver his children, the messengers of the day was of the house of Levi. And their names were Aaron and Moses. It tells us in the 8th verse. But ye are departed out of the way, and have caused many to stumble at the law. Ye have corrupt the covenant of Levi, said Yahweh of hosts. Thus, we read in the 3rd chapter where he will need, or they will need, to be cleansed. And we are seeing where they are being cleansed. For the 9th verse says, therefore have I also made you contemptible, because they had to be clean if they contemptible, and base, meaning low, before all the people, according as ye have not kept my ways, but have been what? Partial in the law. And it lets us know we cannot be partial in the law and confess that we are keeping it or guarding it. Not even the teacher could be partial in the law. And for being partial in the law, Yahweh did not reward the priests, but he made them contemptible and base before the people. And one more place to prove without a shadow of a doubt that it is the priest. It tells us in the 4th chapter. I would like to read the 1st and the 2nd verse. In the 4th chapter of Malachi, it says, the 1st and 2nd verse, for behold, the days come that shall burn as an oven, dealing with this purging. And all the proud, and all that do wickedly shall be stubble. And the day that comes shall burn them up, said Yahweh of hosts, that it shall leave them neither root nor branch. For those that don't pass the test, for those that don't believe in the words of Yahweh, it says in the 2nd verse, but into you that fear my name shall the Son of righteousness arise with healing in his wings. And ye shall go forth and grow up as calves of the stall. And ye shall tread down the wicked, for they shall be ashes under the sole of thy feet. And the day that I shall do this, said Yahweh of hosts. So the Almighty letting us know how we will come up out of this, and how the Almighty brought us up out of Jerusalem using the furnace of affliction. And according to the story, it didn't work. And I'd like to show one more place. Let us turn our scripture to Haggai, the 2nd chapter, to establish that 1st verse being the Levites, being a priest. Who is the messenger? The question was, who would be this person that will bring? Let me read it right. 1 second. It says, in that 3rd verse, Malachi 3:3 is what I was trying to quote. And he shall sit as a refiner and purify of silver, and he shall purify the sons of Levi. And we want to know, who is this? It tells us that we turn our scriptures to Haggai, the 2nd chapter. It answers our question, because we need to know. And if we truly reading these holy scriptures and studying, and if we truly seeking after wisdom more so than silver and gold, we should understand these questions, and we should understand our Creator. For it tells us in Haggai, I think that's where I see it, the 2nd chapter. Get there. Dealing with who is the priest, who is the messenger of the covenant, who will be a refiner fire before the children of Israel. For some reason, I can't even find Haggai, but it tells us that it will be the priest. It's the priest and the priest only. It will always be the priest, as it states in Jeremiah 30, or should I say it, Jeremiah 33. The Almighty said that Levi would never want another offering into him, nor would David, the house of Yehudah, want someone else to sit on the throne. So we find that it is the Levites. It will always be the Levites, all the way to the day that the Almighty bring us back. The Levites, just like the children of Israel, needs to be cleansed. Well, in Haggai, the 2nd chapter, it tells us in the 11th verse, and it reads, "Thus said Yahweh of hosts, as now the priests," and the priests come from the house of Levi, "concerning the law, saying, if one bear holy flesh in the skirt of his garment, and with his skirt do touch bread, or pottage, or wine, or oil, or any meat, shall it be holy? And the priest answered and said, no. Then said Haggai, if one that is unclean by a dead body touch any of these, shall it be unclean? And the priest answered and said, it shall be unclean. And it's a good point to show that you can't offer and you can't keep something holy if it's in a polluted place. And the man that taught Israel holy from the unholy is saying this. It says in the 13th verse, then said Haggai, if one that is unclean by a dead body touch any of these, shall it be unclean? And the priest answered and said, it shall be unclean. Then answered Haggai and said, so is this people, and so is this nation before me, said Yahweh. And so is every work of their hands, and that which they offer there is unclean. So it is the priest. It's the priest that just gave this response, and it is the priest that the Almighty is telling everyone that they are the messenger of the covenant. So it is the priest. It's not Jesus. It's not John the Baptist. It's not some prophet that don't nobody know. But it will always be the priest, because Yahweh have chosen two families. One is the house of the kings, and the other is the house of the priests. Also, it tells us, dealing with Israel being purged from Babylon. Let us turn our scriptures to Isaiah, the 48th chapter. Isaiah, the 48th chapter. Couple more scriptures, then we'll open up this presentation for comments and questions. Isaiah, the 48th chapter. In Isaiah, the 48th chapter, let us go to the 10th verse. Isaiah 48 and 10. And it tells us, behold, I have refined thee, but not with silver. I have chosen thee. Please take note, Israel. In the furnace of affliction. For my own sake, even for my own sake, will I do it. For how should my name be polluted? And I will not give my glory into another. So the Almighty said, this is the thing that he have done to bring you out to himself, that you may be his. It also tells us that we will be proved and tested in these things. It tells us in Jeremiah, the 9th chapter, the 7th verse. Jeremiah, the 9th chapter, the 7th verse. And in Jeremiah, the 9th chapter, the 7th verse, it tells us I'll start at the 6th verse, and it says, thy inhabitation is in the midst of deceit. Through deceit they refuse to know me, said Yahweh. Therefore, thus said Yahweh of hosts, behold, I will melt them, being silver and gold. Behold, I will melt them and try them, test them, prove them. For how should I do for the daughters of my people? So he let us know that we going through this will be melted and tried. It also tells us, if we turn our scriptures to Ezekiel, the 22nd chapter, dealing with us being in the furnace of affliction in our captivity, needing to be purged and purified out of it. And we will be. We're going through it today. That's what your trials and your tribulations represent. Ezekiel, the 22nd chapter. And it tells us in the 18th verse. Son of man, the house of Israel is to me become dross. All they are brass and tin. Remember the word tin? So again, the Almighty said, become dross. All they are brass and tin and iron and lead in the midst of the furnace. being burnt up, being tried. They are even the dross of silver. Therefore, meaning the impurity of silver, that's what we represent. None of us really pure. None of us could really call ourselves silver and gold because of all these impurities, sin, iniquity. The 19th verse. Therefore, thus said Yahweh Elohim, because ye are all become dross, behold, therefore I will gather you into the midst of Jerusalem, as they gather silver and brass and iron and lead and tin into the midst of the furnace, to blow the fire upon it. Please take note. That's how you make the furnace even hotter. To melt it. So will I gather you in what? My anger and in my fury, and I will leave you there and melt you. Yea, I will gather you and blow upon you in the fire of my wrath, and you shall be melted in the midst thereof. As silver is melted in the midst of the furnace, so shall ye be melted in the midst thereof. And ye shall know that I, Yahweh, have poured out my fury upon you. So here, the Almighty show us again how we will be purged and how we are filthy with this dross, being labeled as different metals that need to be purified. It also tells us dealing with coming out of captivity, if we turn our scriptures to the 20th chapter of Ezekiel, while we're still in Ezekiel, go back 2 chapters, and we know the great saying of the 38th verse, where it tells us in the 38th verse of the 20th chapter of Ezekiel, and I will purge out. This purging is something that Yahweh does, and it has been going on since the days of Egypt. Thus, it tells us in this 38th verse, because Yahweh required that which is past, he tells us, and I will purge out from among you the rebels. And that's what is going on when we are being purged. The rebels is being purged out of the earth. Well, here, those that survived the iron furnace of affliction, it says, and I will purge out from among you the rebels, and them that transgress against me. I will bring them forth out of the country through the purging, through the refining, through the trials and tribulations where they sojourned, and they shall not enter into the land of Israel, and ye shall know that I am Yahweh. So as Yahweh required that which is past, Yahweh is still showing how he has and will purge the children of Israel. It also tells us in Zechariah, the 13th chapter. Zechariah, the 13th chapter, in this great day it tells us in the 9th verse, dealing with the purified saviors, and you can survivors, should I have said, and that correspond with chapter 11 of Zechariah. But I just want us to go to Zechariah 13 and 9. For in Zechariah 13 and 9, it tells us this. And I will bring the third part through the fire, the iron furnace of affliction, to try thee, to prove thee, and to punish thee. But it tells us, and I will bring the third part through the fire, and will what? Refine them in the furnace of affliction, as silver is refined. And will what? Try them as gold is tried. They shall call on my name, and I will hear them. I will say, it is my people. And they, once they done came through the furnace of affliction and have been tried and refined, they will say, Yahweh is my Elohim. Also, I would just like to add a couple more verses. It is 7:30. Add a couple more verses to the presentation, and then we can open up for comments and questions dealing with the origin of marriage and the purging and the refining of the children of Israel. It also tells us, dealing with this same note of information, if we turn our scriptures to Psalms 119. Psalms 119. For in Psalms 119, it tells us, dealing with the same note, Psalms 119, verse 119. Psalms 119, verse 119. And in verse 119, it says, dealing with the Holy One of Israel, Thou puttest away all the wicked of the earth. And how do we put it away? And what do we compare the wicked as being? It says, like dross. Therefore I love thy testimonies. Because your testimonies testify and testify against Israel for being full of drought, being unclean, filthy, and they need this drought to be taken away or put away. And when you do, you are putting away the wicked, because it is your acts that make you wicked. So in the psalm again it says, Thou puttest away all the wicked of the earth, like dross. Therefore I love thy testimonies. It also tells us one or two more places dealing with our enemies and how we come up out of this place going through the iron furnace. It tells us in Isaiah, the 65th chapter. Isaiah 65. And in Isaiah 65, it tells us, real quick, I would just like to read a few verses, and let's start at the very first verse. And it reads, I am sought of them as not for me. I am found of them that sought me not. I said, behold me, into a nation that was not called by my name. I have spread out my hands all the day into a rebellious people, which walk in a way that was not good, after their own thoughts, a people that provoke me to anger continuously to my face, that sacrificed in gardens and burnt incense upon altars of brick, which remained among the graves, please take note, and lodged in the monuments, which eat swine flesh and broth of abominable things is in their vessels, like the jumbo, which say, stand by thyself, come not near to me, for I am holier than thou. The scripture says, these are a smoke in my nostril, a fire that burneth all the day. Behold, it is written before me, I will not keep silent, but I will recompense, even recompense into their bosom your iniquities and the iniquities of your fathers, together, said Yahweh, which have burnt incense upon the mountains and blasphemed me upon the hills. Therefore will I measure their former work into their bosom. Thus said Yahweh, as the new wine is found in the cluster, and one says, destroy it not, for a blessing is in it. So will I do for my people, or for my servants' sake, that I may not destroy them all. And I will bring forth a seed out of Jacob, and out of Yehudah an inheritor of my mountains, and my elect shall inherit it, and my servant shall dwell there. So the Almighty letting us know how we will be purged and brought out of these nations. It also tells us in the 66th chapter, if we take a quick look at the 14th verse. I have two more places. 66:14, and it reads, and when ye see this, your heart shall rejoice, and your bones shall flourish like an herb, and the hand of Yahweh shall be known toward his servants, and his indignation toward his enemies. For behold, Yahweh will come with fire, and with his chariots like a whirlwind, to render his anger with fury, and his rebuke with flames of fire. For by fire and by his sword will Yahweh plead with all flesh, and the slain of Yahweh shall be many. They that sacrifice themselves or sanctify themselves and purify themselves in the garden, no, they purify themselves. That's not the refiner. They are not pure. They purify themselves in the gardens, behind one tree, in the midst, eating swine's flesh, and the abomination, and the mouse shall be consumed together, said Yahweh. For I know their works, in their thoughts. It shall come that I will gather all nations in tongues, and they shall come and see my glory. So again, the Almighty is establishing how he will bring us up out of the four corners of the earth and what he will do to the wicked in those nations. And one more place in closing, let us all turn our scriptures to Zechariah, the 10th chapter. Excuse me. Zechariah, the 10th chapter. I would like to read the 6th and the 10th verse in closing. Zechariah, the 10th chapter, the 6th and the 10th verse. And it reads, and I will strengthen the house of Yehuda. After you just read what he said in Isaiah 66 and 65, Zechariah tells us in the 6th verse, and I will strengthen the house of Yehuda, and I will save the house of Joseph, and I will bring them again to place them. For I have mercy upon them, and they shall be as though I had not cast them off. After they come through this purifying fire, once they are purified, once they are refined, the scripture says they shall be as though I had not cast them off. For I am Yahweh, their Elohim, and will hear them. The 10th verse says, I will bring them again also out of the land of Egypt and gather them out of Assyria. And when you read about Egypt and Assyria late in the scriptures, it is an eschatological and metaphor or scriptures dealing with all the nations. Egypt and Assyria is just used, symbolizing all the nations. I will bring them again also out of the land of Egypt and gather them out of Assyria and will bring them into the land of Gilead and Lebanon, and place shall not be found for them. And he shall pass through the sea with affliction, and shall smite the waves in the sea, and all the deeps of the river shall dry up, and the pride of Assyria shall be brought down, and the scepter of Egypt shall depart away. Note, Egypt and Assyria is representing all the nations, and at this time, the whole earth is given into the hands of the wicked. So the Almighty is allowing us to know that the scepter of Egypt shall depart away, and I will strengthen them in Yahweh, and they shall walk up and down in his name, said Yahweh. End of the presentation, and we can open up for comments and questions.